Hey, I'm Chris Bacchinelli. I'm 21. Born and raised in Brooklyn. John Travolta walked down my block in Saturday Night Fever. Ever since then, I thought acting was the most important thing in the world. But last year, I went to Africa, and my priorities changed. Now I'm in front of the camera because I want to show my generation that we can change the world. So I'm heading to the poorest countries on Earth to find ways that we can help. This week, I'm in Tanzania. I'm interviewing the experts, I'm immersing in a new culture, and I'm finding ways that we can change the world together. What do I think about Africa? I think that there are a lot of problems, violence, poverty, AIDS. I feel that there's so many problems that it's impossible for me to wrap my head around it. And I guess the major question that I'd like to be answered is, do people want to leave? Do people want to leave Africa, or do they want to stay there? And I don't know. I mean, I only hear bad stuff on the news, so I'm very curious to know, what are the good things that are happening there? So hopefully over the next 30 days, I'll understand how people live the way they do. I'm in Tanzania, East Africa. It's one of the poorest countries on Earth, but it's also one of the most peaceful nations in all of Africa. I'm going to find out firsthand what life is really like and what we can do to help. My journey begins in a village called Umbasani.
What's your name?
Diwi.
Diwi.
From in Tanzania.
It's my first day, and I'm already being invited to a sacrificial goat slaughter.
Kwanini, man?
Killer.
Now, what is this you're playing?
This is called marimba. Zuka. Mina, I'm sing.
Rap.
To help me small to buy a CD.
Abdullah, another teenager I just met, is welcoming me into his home, and he doesn't even know me. How much is this room?
It's
Yeah.
$5.
$5 a month?
Yeah.
So how much do you make at your job?
$50 in like America.
For 1 month?
3 months.
3 months, $50?
Yeah.
The money is a problem for us, If you want money, doesn't matter, you got to do the hard way, like to dig the stone down, or like to dig the wall, or maybe to slash the grasses, and then you get the money, and then you get little money. For 1 hour, maybe you can get the 500, thing like that.
The ghetto. You know the ghetto?
The ghetto.
Yeah.
This is the real ghetto.
These are so poor that you are not even protected from the vagaries of weather. During the rainy season, it rains. It can anytime catch fire. The floor is dusty, and you still see these primitive shelters.
Water is extremely scarce in the ghetto where these young men live.
It is not at all uncommon for people to walk 10 to 12 to 15 kilometers a day to get water.
Hey!
One of the saddest health aspects in Tanzania is that children often die of diarrhea as a result of poor water, even though diarrhea can be treated for literally pennies.
Picture. If you could move out of this place, if somebody gave you a plane ticket to go to America, would you do it?
I do it.
If life is so difficult, I want to know why people stay here.
This is their home. Where would they go? If your home was in dire straits and it was, maybe you'd have the option to say, well, hell, I'm going somewhere that doesn't exist here,
This is Pete O'Neill, a former head of the Black Panthers. He's lived in Tanzania for 40 years, where he and his wife run a community center that educates hundreds for free.
People live on a subsistence basis. Rarely does money come into their lives. They grow corn. When you see rain and you see the sun shine and you see the stalks of corn, you see life.
In the rural areas, at least you can have a meal. You can have shelter.
Now, when they leave here and go to the cities, I think that's called urban flight. There's really nothing to do.
Arusha, a major city in Tanzania. Average income, $450 a year.
There is an illusion that going to the cities, you are likely to lead a better life.
At least half the population lives on less than $1 a day.
What is the unemployment rate in Tanzania?
The urban unemployment could easily be in the double figures.
Some youth who go to the city, you know, the twinkling lights, the better life, and the promise there, only to find that their lives are actually worse. They're living on the streets, engaged in prostitution, working as so-called house girls, domestic laborers that, you know, verge on slavery in some cases.
I'm Jumbo!
As I travel from the cities to the farms to Mount Kilimanjaro, I realize that teenagers are struggling to survive and not going to school.
That's the problem we have in our society, lack of education. Lack of education.
Abasai is like most teenagers here. He will never go to high school because he can't afford the fees.
I was recently helping someone pay school fees for a secondary school student, and the total cost for that child came to about $160.
Are there some parents that can't afford that in Tanzania?
It would mean making tremendous sacrifices.
Families are often faced with the dilemma of deciding who will go to secondary school, which child.
If it's one day out of the year, I swear to you, it'll be 100 that people come here asking me for assistance to help them with their school fees.
I come to get the education here. After here, and then I want to go to study. I want to find the money. After to find the money, I want to go to study guide and driver.
But school fees are so ridiculously high. That is why our organization, UAACC, is so important, because it fills that gap.
I decide to explore some schools in the northern village of Mtuambu to see if the situation's any different.
The children that are of secondary school age, only about 6% are actually in school.
What is the transition like from primary to secondary school?
Well, it's based exclusively on one exam.
For those who will pass the examination are going to be selected to government secondary schools. For the failure ones, have to go back home to find anything to do in their living. And if their parents can afford the expenses of a private secondary school, they can even take them there.
So between primary entry into the first 4 years of secondary education, there is a significant filtering and dropping of students.
It's the cycle that happens that, you know, you don't have enough schools, you don't have enough teachers, you don't have enough teachers, you have fewer schools.
But the question is, how much money do governments have to invest in education?
I understand education is a major concern, but what is the government doing to help?
The government has taken serious initiatives to encourage community-based secondary education.
What does that mean, community-based?
Community-based is that people volunteer their services.
I'm shocked. People are working together to build schools, pay teachers, and educate their children.
Maybe one of the strongest legacies of the traditional way is the communal life.
Darasa. Darasa.
And there is shared responsibility for the preservation, for the well-being, for the defense of the community.
Jumbo!
I'm now beginning to realize how important culture is in understanding the development of Tanzania.
And sometimes when you're looking for answers, you need to look for them within a cultural structure that you're in harmony with.